Minoki Jagat, good morning, and welcome to Native News Online's Election Coffee Break. This is our weekly morning chat about all things election, so grab a coffee and listen in while we discuss the latest November 2024 election coverage with our very own Native News Online election staff. Today with us we have Marlon White Eagle and Levi Kurtz.
Good morning, Neely. How are you?
Good. How are you? Does everybody have a coffee today this time?
I do have a coffee, I tell you.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody show off your mugs.
Hey, Marlon, how are you? How's Wisconsin?
Yeah, it's good over here. We had a really cool weekend. It was, probably 10, 20 degrees lower than it normally is this time of the year.
Yeah, the same here in Michigan. And last weekend weekend before was Potawatomi Gathering. It was so hot there that the dancers had a hard time in the dance arena. And so this was much more pleasant of a weekend. So I agree with you.
So today we are going to be discussing some fun things that we all did last week. We all attended the Kamala Harris rally. Marlon, of course, attended the one in Wisconsin, and Levi and I went to the one in Detroit. Unfortunately, over the weekend, I saw that Trump was claiming that those pictures of the rallies were AI. So I figured it would be fun to kind of talk about our experience at the rally, because I know I took pictures and I know that I don't know how to use AI. So I know that personally our pictures on Native News Online are not AI. But Marlon, why don't you start by talking about kind of what your experience at the rally was? You sent me and Levi pictures, and you seemed like you got really, really close to the stage.
Oh yeah. It was it was scheduled for maybe about 1 o'clock. So I got the time they told us to get there was a little bit around prior to noon. So I thought I was early, and there was people there before me, and people were parking. It was at a location. The Country Jam is a popular country music festival in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and you would think the location would have great parking and handle the crowds, but boy, with the extra security and police presence, it was cumbersome to get in there. I waited in line. I must have waited at least 30, 40 minutes to get to the parking lot, and then trying to find parking, and then going through the registration and security. It was and then my wife was attending as well, and I was telling her people were parking and walking in, and yeah, the people were walking 1-2 miles to get into the location. So it was a big crowd. I'm not sure the size. I didn't see any numbers on it, but it was, there was bleachers there. They were all filled. It was there was a little overflow section where people could view the speeches on the side away from the bigger crowd.
Yeah, I heard 12,000, and I'm going to say this, and I'm glad you brought the subject up, Neely. As publisher, I want to say this, that we have to do our election coverage in a very nonpartisan fashion. However, I do feel, and regardless if it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee and then the Republican nominee, whoever needs to get called out, we're willing to call them out as well in terms of fact checking and discussing what's real versus what isn't. And I think Americans really deserve that. And I saw the same social media post by the former president, and he said it was all AI, and the Harris campaign is putting out these false photos. And I was in Detroit, and they're telling me 15,000 people. Everything that goes with a large crowd, we had to deal with over in Detroit, right, Neely? I mean, traffic jams, sitting on the press bus for an hour, hour and a half after the event just to get from one point to point B was very tiring, and I had to drive 2.5 hours afterward. I got home close to 1 o'clock in the morning, and so it was for real. But I think we do need to call these out, and I think it's, as I said, the American public really deserves that.
Mm-hmm. There was also a huge UAW presence at the rally in Detroit. Was there any members from the UAW at the Wisconsin rally?
I wasn't aware of any, but I do know I did see some. There's like a orange Union shirts. I seen some of those in the crowd, but there was no particular. It sounded like when she landed at the airport there in Eau Claire that there was a Girl Scout troop that had greeted her at the airport as she was coming in.
I wonder if they gave her some Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, don't tempt us, and we're having morning coffee. That's for sure. With the election and Neely, I'm older. How's that? Elder age, and some depending on what tribe you're in. But no, it's you're younger, and this is what your first presidential campaign, right? That you've ever covered. Tell me your impressions.
So this is the first presidential campaign that I've covered as a reporter. Back in 2020, I worked for a state representative campaign, so I got to do a little bit of canvassing also for Joe Biden at the time as well, just because that was kind of part of it. So I have experience there, but I think, I went to the Harris rally in Kalamazoo. But then she was only still the vice presidential candidate because at the time Joe Biden was still running as the presidential Democratic candidate. So that rally was a little bit different. It was still very energetic, but you could tell that at Wednesday's rally, as when she showed up as the Democratic presidential nominee with, Waltz as her vice presidential nominee, everybody seemed to be energized. Everybody seemed to be excited. You could really feel the hope in the air for this upcoming election. It seems like the Democrats, although they did admit that there's a lot of work to be done, they kept emphasizing at the time last Wednesday, there was 90 days from that Wednesday till election day. So they did, recognize that there still is a lot of work to be done. But I think the coolest part about Wednesday was her pulling up straight up, like in the plane, right up to the hangar, because it was in an airplane hangar at the Detroit airport. So Air Force 2 was able to just pull right up to the event, and we got some really cool photos. And I think those are the ones that Trump is claiming is AI. But I was there. Levi was there. All the reporters were there. All those people were there. In fact, there were so many people there that it was hot also. I think at least one person needed medical attention for every speaker. And there was at least, 10 to 15 speakers before Harris even spoke. So to say that experience is AI is just untrue. I could not make that up, even if we tried, Levi.
Yeah, and hey, I do want to note with the selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz, if Harris and Waltz get elected in November, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan will become a governor, the first female American Indian, Native American, however you want to say it, governor ever. And she is a tribal citizen of the White Earth Ojibwe tribe up in northern Minnesota. She and Governor Waltz are in their second term, and they were elected together. What was it, about 6 years ago now, I guess. And so the 2026, if his term limits up there in Minnesota, from my understanding, so. she would probably be running. However, if he wins the vice presidency, he'll resign shortly thereafter, after November, and probably be obviously before it gets sworn in on January 20th. So we'll have a Native American governor. And Marlon, you're up in Wisconsin, much closer. I'm over in Michigan. And what do you know about the governor of Minnesota, Tim Waltz?
Yeah, he was a congressman, and he grew up in Nebraska, and then moved to Minnesota to become a teacher. And then you're hearing a lot of the news reports that he was the football coach, social studies teacher, and then went to the House of Representatives at the urging of his high school students, and then after I think 12 years in Congress, he decided to switch course and change and run for governor, got elected. And it sounds like the district that he represented as a congressman was like the first Democratic congressman elected to that area for the first time. It's generally been a Republican stronghold, and he was able to garner enough support from the area that he became the first Democratic congressman to cover that district.
I have seen.
But also, did you guys have a lot of Minnesota residents? I know we're closer, but was there a Minnesota crowd at the Detroit rally? Or that may be a little bit, but we had a really large presence of Minnesota people, residents coming over to Wisconsin.
And that's across the river, right?
It's about 2 hours from St. Paul, Minneapolis.
And to my ignorance, I did learn how to pronounce the name of the city, Eau Claire. Thank you, Martin,
right,
for that.
right. Yeah.
Told me that. I had heard it pronounced 2 or 3 different ways during the last week, and it's Eau Claire. So the E silent on that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then one of the things, we're talking about the reaction, and one of the things that the eagle, obviously it's the bald eagle's the national bird, national symbol, and we did have an eagle fly over the location of the rally, and it was for natives the cultural significance.
Well, how cool is that?
It's a messenger to the creator, and
yes.
The crowd, a pretty diverse crowd. They all recognized it and were applauded it as it flew over. So that was a really kind of like a culturally significant to me, but also to that symbol of the nation. Like the crowd was observing that. So
a lot of symbolism.
Like
special occasion.
Person there.
A lot of symbolism there, Marlon. That is wonderful. Wow.
Yeah.
I think overwhelmingly, we have seen a lot of support for Walz as the vice presidential pick. I have seen a little bit of discourse about his handling about Line 3, the pipeline that has been well contested for a while, that I even protested back in, 2021 at this point. So there is a little bit of discourse about that. I guess, what did you think about, was that the first time you've heard him talk as vice presidential nominee? I believe so. That was the day after he was picked, Marlon. So I guess, what did you think about the things he had to say? What did he give you good vibes?
Oh yeah. I'm working with. I've reached out to tribal leaders. And by my count, there's 10 tribes there in Minnesota, and I reached out to and got some response, reaction on Governor Walz being named the running mate to the Harris campaign, and it's largely supportive of the pick. That that it's exciting for them, as well as as governor, he's been really respectful to the government relationship, in the state, So there's down south, there's like the Prairie Island Band, there's the Lower Sioux. So there's a lot of Chippewa tribes and a lot of Sioux tribes that encompass the tribal nations of Minnesota. And the reaction is, they had good relations with Governor Walz and his administration. Obviously, Lieutenant Governor has to have some effect on that, and some input on how to engage with the tribes. And it's been fairly positive, even though they've been able to, all of these gatherings haven't been. What did the one say? Happy was one of the quotes of, some of the, it's not always on good terms, but they approach those situations as best they can. If it's, I don't know if it's contentious or what have you, but they feel like they're being listened to by the governor.
Yeah, and I think that gets anything in life. Nothing is 100% the way you want it to be, and that's true with marriages. Parents with their children and vice versa, those relationships is no one is 100% aligned with people 100% of the time. And so I think it's, I guess, and I'm speaking maybe as an older Native American, but in life, I found that you have to take the good and the bad, and hopefully the good far exceeds the bad. And he may not have been handled the line 5, or excuse me, line 5 is here in Michigan, but the line 3, and I do know that there were a lot of protests, and sometimes those court systems allow certain things that governors have no control over. So I don't know enough about a comment, but Neil, I think that is something that Native News Online we probably need to explore so that we can just give a fair assessment. And as I said, we have to serve in a very nonpartisan fashion. So telling all sides of the story is so critical as people make up their minds to who to vote for in November. And the main thing is I will encourage people as the publisher to get out and register and participate in the participate in this coming election. That's just so critical that we do that, regardless of who you're going to vote for. So I think we need to bring this to an end. What do you think, Neely?
Yes, I think it's about time. I'm sure everybody has, taken their coffee break, enjoyed their coffee while listening.
I love these coffee breaks. They're fun.
And so that brings us to a close. I just want to remind everyone that if you haven't registered to vote, make sure to go do that. Marlon did a very well-written piece on, kind of a very informative piece on how to register to vote. So I just want to remind everyone, if you haven't already, and if you are registered, just make sure you're registered because you don't want to leave that up to chance. But with that, big wish for joining us today, and we hope to share our coffee again during our next election coffee break with Native